Welcome to a PSL Demo Day. I'm Jason DeBacker, president of PSL Foundation and maintainer of a few open source projects in the library, including Cost of Capital Calculator, OG Core, and OG USA. Today, I want to share a little bit about how to get set up to contribute to a project, and this includes how to fork and clone a GitHub repository where the source code of those projects resides. So let me begin. I'll just share a screen. Let me just share actually my whole desktop. We're going to jump between a few different applications here. Okay, so first I'm going to go to a repository for Cost of Capital Calculator, just to pick one PSL project I'm familiar with. And on this repository, I'm going to first, if I were a new user and I had not forked this, I would click on the fork button, and this will allow me to create a new fork. And if you administer more than one repository, you can select where you want that forked to. I already have my own fork, so I'm gonna not do that. But let me just go ahead and go to my fork, because once you click the fork button, you'll be directed to essentially your own copy in the cloud of that repository. So my GitHub handle is DeBacker, so I'll go to github.com/DeBacker/cost of capital calculator. If you click the fork and forked it to your home repository, you would have your GitHub username rather than mine here in the URL. Once at that fork, the next thing you'll want to do is clone the repository. Okay, to clone the repository, we'll click on the code button and we'll see a URL here starting with HTTPS. Let's go ahead and copy that to our clipboard. Okay. With that, we're going to go to our terminal window or command prompt on a Windows machine. Here, I'm assuming you already have GitHub installed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new terminal window. And first thing, before I paste what I had copied, let me navigate to a repository. So I'm just going to put this, I already have a copy of this in a place I like. I'm going to go ahead and just put this in my downloads folder. For you, you'll want to navigate to whatever directory is convenient for you to have the source code for the project you just forked. So I'm going to put it in downloads. Let me just paste that URL I copied. Actually, before I paste, what I really want to do is I want to type Git Clone. So we'll do that. So I'll type Git Clone. And then I paste that URL, hit enter. And what we're doing here is we're downloading the source code from that repository onto our machine. So thus far, we've made two copies of the cost of capital calculator model. The first in the fork, so that's sitting another copy in the cloud. And then the second copy is with this Git Clone command. We're downloading a copy of the source code onto our local machine, right? And that'll be the source code that we can work with. All right, so the download here is almost complete. There we go. Okay, so what I'll do now is let me go ahead and open. Let me show you here on my machine. So I've got downloads, and then it created this folder with the name of the repository, Cost of Capital Calculator, and there in it is all the source code. Okay. I'm going to do two things to get set up here. First, I want to navigate into the folder that was just created, Cost of Capital Calculator. I can see that those files are there. And let me type git remote-v. Okay. So this is what we're doing is we're looking at what are the remote repositories or repositories in the cloud that this local copy of the repository is kind of set up to communicate with. All right, so typing git remote tells me what are the remote repositories that we're communicating with. All right, and I see two URLs. Both have this nickname at the beginning called origin. And then the URLs you can see refer to my copy, my fork in the cloud, DeBacker/cost of capital calculator. And you can see at the end of each of these lines is fetch and push. So that is, there's a URL, where am I going to go fetch, i.e. download new code from, and where would I go to push or push my changes to, okay? So I can fetch or push from my fork. And my fork is referred to by this nickname origin. So I don't have to type this whole URL. I could do something like git fetch origin. Okay. And that would go download any changes here. There are none. We're perfectly in sync. We just cloned the repository. All right, but I want to communicate, like I want to contribute back to the PSL models project, one that is worked on by, say, many other contributors, not just my fork of it. So I want to configure not just my copy, but I want to be able to communicate with the kind of master or upstream repository, as we'll call it. And that is the PSL, in this case, the PSL models fork. Okay, that's the main fork here where most of the activity is taking place. So let me go, I'm back at my web browser. I'm going back to PSL models / cost of capital calculator. And I'm going to do the same thing here where, as I did before with the clone, that is, I'm going to click the code button. I'm going to copy that URL, and then I'm going to paste it here after the command git remote add upstream. So this is telling Git to add a remote fork to my repository here, my local Git setup. I'm going to call it upstream, and then I give it the URL. So now when I go back to look at git remote -b, I've got 4 lines here: a fetch and push to the origin, which is my fork, and a fetch or push to what I called upstream, which is that upstream repository, the one that I want to, ultimately contribute to. The reason for these 2 different copies, the origin and the upstream, is that I'm going to make changes, and I have full control over the changes that happen on my fork, my origin. But the upstream repository may be administered by others, and I might not have full merge privileges there. And so, while that's ultimately what I want to contribute to, I'm going to kind of stage things in my origin while I get maybe things worked out, the code refined, and then I'm going to merge them or ask permission to merge them into that upstream repository once the code looks the way I want it to. Okay. So we got a little bit of lingo already. We've forked a repository, that is, made a copy in the cloud. We've cloned it, that is, we've brought those files down to our local computer. Okay. I want to introduce one other concept here, and this is working with different branches, okay? So, or different copies of the code. So if I type git branch here, I have one branch, that's the master branch. Sometimes it's called the main branch. The master or main branch is going to be a part of the repository from the beginning. As I do work though, I want to create a branch off of this master or main branch so I can make some changes, but keep that master or main branch intact. The source code in that master or main branch, I want to be able to run and function as expected. And I'll do my experimentation and my modifications on a different copy of the code. And only when that experimentation or modification of the code kind of turns into something useful will I bring it back and try to merge it into that master or main branch. So let me do this right now. So let me add another branch. So I'll do git checkout -b, which is going to be, we're going to check out it and create at the same time a new branch here. That's what the -b is saying, create a new branch. And let's call it, we'll just call it test branch here, nothing creative. Okay. And so that's created another copy of my code. If I type git branch again, I can see now there are 2 branches, master and test branch. And I happen to be on test branch at the moment. Let me go here and let's just open a file, maybe something simple. Let's just open the README for this repository. I'm going to open the README file for cost of capital calculator in VS Code here. So this is my preferred text editor. All right, let's see what we could change here. Maybe we'll just make a modification. Let's just update the version number here. 1.2, say it's 1.3.1. It's not, but we'll just make that change. So I made the change, I saved the file, and I'm going to type git status And it's going to say I'm on test branch, so it's telling me what branch I'm on, and that there's changes not staged for commit. And it says use git add, and then the file name to stage that change. And then we're going to do a git commit. And with git commit, we always want to type a message so we can kind of remember and others can see what we changed with that particular commit. So I'll just say updated version number. Okay. So that's a change that I've made on this branch. If I go back, so you can see here my text editor version 1.3.1, if I do git checkout master, so I switch back to the master branch, you can see it reverts to that old copy. So all my changes are in a safe place on this test branch, another branch I created. And only when I want to make those changes part of the final or the master branch will I merge those into that master branch. Okay, so let me point you to one more resource here. We've kind of thrown quite a bit of lingo at you in terms of fetching and cloning and checking out other branches. PSL Models has in the library a tutorial for GitHub. So let me go to pslmodels.org and show you where to find that. Actually, it's an incubating project. So let me go to GitHub/PSL Models. And so we'll look through the PSL GitHub organization, and I'm going to find a particular repository called Git Tutorial. All right, Git Tutorial is a tutorial on how to use GitHub, and it goes over some of what we've talked about today, as well as kind of more detailed information about how to work with Git and GitHub. All right, so this is a valuable resource. You can find that at pslmodels.github.io/git-tutorial. And there's a great visual here created by Rick Evans that helps you visualize what we've gone through today in terms of starting with that main repository, creating a fork of that repository also in the cloud, and then bringing the code down to your local machine through a Git Clone command that we used today. And then working with the code on your local machine by taking out or checking out branches where you can do your development, and then keeping that master or main branch intact with working code and only bringing those changes in once you're sure they work. Okay, well, hopefully this has been helpful in getting set up with GitHub. We hope that you use what you've learned here and come contribute to some of the PSL projects. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.